Welcome to Thinking Out Loud.
Morning, everybody.
Morning. We're with a career and job coach, Amelia Moyer Perez.
Hi everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming and embracing our little podcast.
Yes.
And it's going to be really simple. We're just gonna talk like we've all known each other for a long time, and Jay's prepared questions, so we're gonna kind of run off of that and give you a chance to tell everybody what your kind of job is and what you enjoy doing, and maybe to find some more clients for you to help.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was really touched by what you do, to be very honest. We have Brendan, who is not joining us today, but had his podcast dropped this week. And he, could very well use your services as well at some point. So we had a long discussion the other day, Jay, didn't we, about things. So we want to start in on your questions there, bud?
Yeah. Can you first introduce yourself?
Yes, I can. So hello, my name is Amelia, and yes, one of the hats I wear is being a life coach. Sometimes I call it creativity coach or executive function coach. And then I also have lots of different creative projects. I'm not currently, I do education work within my coaching. I'm not currently working as an educator, but I have a background with that. And I can get interested in almost anything. I have my favorite things, but I'm someone who is really curious and I like to try out all sorts of things.
Nice.
Did you have any questions?
I'm going to run off you.
What made you decide to participate in Thinking Out Loud?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I noticed right when I saw the ad that you all put out asking for people who might want to be on a podcast, you mentioned that the participants have disabilities. And for me, I feel it's so important for people of all abilities to interact with one another and for disabled people's voices and experiences to be heard by like their larger community that they live in. So that's just something I think about at times. So I felt like, oh, there's an opportunity for me to do what I believe in and participate and connect with people.
I'm 100% with you on that. Can you please share your disability?
Yeah, so I am on the autism spectrum and I have ADHD, and I believe that sometimes as I have moved along with my diagnosis, which I only learned about as an adult, I've moved in and out of feeling like really strongly identified to more fluid, like it's one way to look at it. And that just depends on where I'm at, how I'm thinking, and what environment I'm in. So, yeah, mm-hmm.
So you weren't diagnosed as a child?
Yeah, I wasn't until I was in my late teens. So actually, a lot of people I work with also had that experience of growing up not knowing, but knowing like something's definitely different about me, but I don't know why, or I don't have an excuse for being this way, so I have to just figure it out on my own.
Does that make school harder?
Yeah, well, it's something I think about, like, what if I had a diagnosis? Maybe then I would have gotten like accommodations and support and people would have understood. But on the flip side, maybe it would have just also, I have friends and clients and people whose experiences has been like they just got worse treatment or they were put in special ed and they didn't receive appropriate resources there, so at least they got to stay in the classroom. There's such a range of experiences. All I can do is be like, well, that's how it was for me. And then, so I see a positive of like, I didn't get this label and I didn't get sort of this one type of narrow experience. And on the flip side, I could have maybe missed out on support. But it's just so different for each person.
Can I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 28.
Okay. So this kind of resonates with me because my daughter is 27, and she was misdiagnosed. She actually was told she was bipolar. And just in the last 3 years, she was diagnosed with autism and not bipolar. And I know a lot of people have had that same diagnosis, and learning to work around that and then be medicated for something you really didn't need to be medicated for. And then having it make you feel even worse than when you started. I think that we hear about that. The diagnosis is later in life a lot more. I mean, I was diagnosed with ADD when I was in school in the 90s. And I also have dyslexia, mostly with numbers, not with letters. And I wasn't diagnosed until my 10th grade year. And at that point in time, they didn't have IEPs or anything. You went to the resource room and you did your homework, and you were kind of treated differently because you went to those rooms. People knew that you were different because of that. But let me tell you, it made a big difference in the way that I learned and the way that I was taught, so that I excelled. I went from a D.C. student to an A.B. student.
Wow.
And, I think that we need to remember that not everybody is educated on the disabilities. And that having a disability, and we know, Jay, having a disability doesn't define us. And we talked a little bit about that with Brendan's podcast as well. Because I think Brendan sometimes, he won't tell people he's autistic. He'll just tell people he has epilepsy, because he's almost ashamed of what society may have put on, having a disability. But I'm really big on telling my kiddos, just because you have ADHD or autism, epilepsy, whatever it is, doesn't mean that it defines you, and you can persevere. And I'm seeing some beautiful artwork. So that kind of touches me too. I'm an artist as well.
Is there somehow we can share this on camera?
Definitely. I could hold a few pieces up. But before I do that, I wanted to just respond to what you shared, Amy, because I'm really glad to hear that you had that positive experience of once you got the educational adjustments and like format that really worked for your brain, then you actually got a chance to excel. And it's so common of an experience, I think, especially for girls or feminine presenting people, like, you have this other thing, you're bipolar, XYZ, because of the traditional idea of what autism is, or different or of how people internalize things. Because even when you didn't have a diagnosis, like I was saying, you might know something's different and you have to figure out your own strategies or ways to adapt, because I share that view on disability. Like, it's not something that defines people. And not only that, I don't think it's an individual's like curse and affliction that they have. I think people just have different abilities and capacities and things that impact them, and our world could just accept people and meet them where they are, rather than be like, oh, that's your problem.
And educating our educators, right? I mean, that was the biggest thing when I was in high school. I graduated in 94, so this was a long time ago, 30 years ago. And I think it was almost like the educators knew that these disabilities, at the time that I got diagnosed with ADD, there was no ADHD, it was just ADD. And it was very new, up and coming, very new diagnoses. And most teachers didn't buy into it. It was one thing that they didn't understand about kiddos and what they were going through. They thought it was a made up thing. Same with dyslexia, until the school that I went to, I ended up going to a college, landmark college, for a couple semesters while I was in high school to get some help with my dyslexia. And it was about formatting, but it really took me educating the educators when I was 15 to say, hey, this is how I learn, and this is the way I learn, and this is the way I need to be taught. I still think that this happens today. And I still think that there are some educators that are so involved, like Dana Decker. Jay knows really well. I know really well. I don't know if you know who she is, but
I've heard about her and I got to meet her once. But
she's a pretty amazing soul, just all-around person, right?
She has a special place in my heart.
She has a special place in my heart too, for sure. She was the one that helped Brendan transition from 6th grade to 7th grade, and then was his para for a little bit, then was his instructional person for the rest of his time in school, and single-handedly helped my twins through a lot of different things too. So there are different educators out there that are really supreme. And then there are educators that really could use a little more education. And I don't know if you saw, Jay, this past week's Herald. Did you see the Herald this week?
Yeah.
Did you see that they were working on helping the educators with some education on helping kiddos that are going through issues? Did you see that?
I must have missed it. I usually like skim it.
Yeah.
If I see a headline that draws me in.
Yeah, then you read it. Well, it was my kids went through a pretty traumatic event a few years ago, and they really needed some compassion and understanding for their PTSD and stuff that they were going through. And I was finding that I was bumping heads with everybody at the high school and the tech center because they didn't have the compassion piece. And they didn't have the knowledge of psychological training. And they're like, we've been trying to hire somebody that is in psychiatry and will help with having therapy and different things. And there's definitely different teachers at the school that are very well equipped to do some of those things, but there's not enough educators comparative to the kids that have some of these problems going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of their underlying problems may be a past trauma, but also can be ADHD and autism. And then their regulation of not understanding what's going on and not being able to regulate their emotions going forward. And that
it kind of one makes the other worse.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
if you're not educated in all those things, you just get labeled, like I was when I was in elementary school, as the bad kid.
Yeah.
I was in 7th grade before they figured out I couldn't even see.
Wow.
And I needed glasses. And I just got labeled the bad kid. So once I got my glasses and I got to sit further up in the classroom, I excelled more.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't particularly like my teachers any more than I did before because they had treated me so badly.
Yeah.
But I knew that my job there was to get better grades and to learn and be educated. But I still think from what happened to me 30 years ago is the same thing that's happening to some of these kiddos these days with their disabilities or their irregularities or whatever we're calling them to be politically correct today. I think you got to call a duck a duck.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like shying, it's not a bad word.
No.
And I think being open about it and on it, like, contributes to the perception that it's just like some people have disabilities. Big deal.
Normalizing
there are
it.
ducks and they're called ducks. And being like, oh, I don't want to say that means that you believe it's something to hide. So the more people, and it's not easy when at large this isn't the experience you have. So it's kind of a journey and sometimes it's actually even not safe to be open about it, which is rough.
In your own household sometimes.
Yeah.
You can get a diagnosis at 16, 17, 18 from the school and your family doesn't believe in it, so they're not going to do anything to help you or move you forward. Yeah. And that's going to be challenging as well. I think that thankfully I'm not closed-minded, and I grew up in a household that my mom did everything possible
Mm-hmm.
to get me where I needed to go. And she was telling them, like in third and fourth grade, when I was behind in math
Mm-hmm.
and was writing numbers backwards, there's something wrong. I don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be helping her. That's hard when, as a parent, you're seeing it with your child's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was struggling from third grade until 10th grade
Yeah.
when they finally gave me diagnoses, and then they were like, okay, this is what we need to do. I was just called really awful names and told that I was a really bad kid, and I wasn't any of those things, but those things stick with you when you're growing up.
Yeah.
And even today I realize sometimes you have to take a step back from what somebody might have said to you 30 something years ago and realize, no, that wasn't it wasn't a problem with me. It was something that I have and something that they didn't have any knowledge of. But I think today's day and age, we need to be more accepting and more understanding that people are dropping autism like this, but it's really that they're being diagnosed with it, and that we're more aware of these things. So it's not like we're autism happy. It's just that this is the way things are, and people are finally getting a diagnosis so they can process themselves and move forward and know that their learning a style isn't a bad thing. Just to embrace it, and go forward and do art and do what you would like to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, we got off on tangent.
I was just thinking, like you were talking about, like para educators. Like you really need to click with yours. Like the last one I had, I'm not mentioning any names on here, but she was wretched.
Wretched, huh?
Wow.
I hate to say it, but
Was she just not understanding of what your disability was, or she was just dumbing you down? What was she doing?
I kind of.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think so. I think some paras mean well, but when they get somebody, Jay is very intelligent. He's super intelligent, and if you sit down and have a conversation with you, you really realize how intelligent he really is.
And I think you told me before B had
some issues with the para too. Yeah.
That
And
must
I
have
think
been
sometimes
really
they just don't understand,
Yeah.
they're put in these positions and they're not trained properly.
Right. It's just kind of okay. And yeah, it's funny you said that, Jay, because in my mind we were talking about school, and I was gonna ask you what was your experience like in school, and then you shared that, and yeah, it is a really intimate relationship to have a para, because it's like, okay, just you and your helper. And yeah, if you have anything else you want to share about what school did you go to school in Randolph?
Randolph High School.
Yeah.
Were you in the tech center or just in the high school?
Just in the high school.
Yeah. So Brendan actually got to be involved in what they called VIP, and that was in the tech center. So they did some hands-on stuff, which was really nice. They did some woodworking stuff, and they did some I don't know, they did all kinds of just kind of artsy craftsy on the higher spectrum of things. So like using woodworking tools and doing stuff like that. And I think that, when you have a classroom full of kiddos that have multiple different disabilities, some co-occurring, some very similar, but it's really hard to be, what's the word that I want? Just be steady through the whole class.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that learn like Jay, who might just have slight disability, or they have Brendan, who is a little more complex in his learning and development and understanding. He has very hard, gross, fine motor skills. His competency for a lot of things are, had him registered as, I hate this word, but mentally R, which they don't say anymore, but that's all on his paperwork. But when you talk to Brendan, you don't get that.
No, that's on his
Yeah.
Wow.
Can't you?
It's just
You
the way
can't sue?
no, because it's the way it was what they did years ago
Mm-hmm.
and what the testing was done. And IQ is a big part of that.
Yes.
It's
But
funny
somebody's
'cause
IQ doesn't define.
it's such a tiny slice of
It's
the
so-
wholeness of a person. You
I
really
wish they
can't
would get away from it, to
boil
be
someone
honest.
down
Like,
onto a page.
Yeah, and for me, it like almost hinders you having such high
IQs.
Mm.
IQ because
Yeah.
you don't get
The services you need.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing is like I think we need to steer away from things like that because it doesn't allow for growth and development in all individuals across the board.
Mhm.
And that's the same way with spectrum. Brendan's higher on the spectrum. I mean, he's verbal, but they, when he developed epilepsy, he had a first seizure at 15 months, and then about 2 years old, he had a really big one, and then got diagnosed finally. But they were telling us, they were scaring us. They were like, "Oh, he's not going to continue to walk and talk. He's not going to be able to understand things. This is going to be a lifelong thing, and you're going to have to really prepare for the worst. Hope for the best." And here he is at 26 years old, and for me, he thrives at so many things. The kid is like at a drop of a hat can tell you a statistic for the Boston Red Sox, past, present, and sometimes the future of things that they've been talking about. Basketball, like he'll tell you the player's origin and where they're from and what they're doing and how long they played and what teams they've been on. And sports is really his niche.
Yeah.
And whereas with people with autism, that's usually the case, is where they shine is in like one thing. One kind of genre of things, and they're really obsessed with that one thing and have that knowledge. And I've never seen Brendan as anything different. I've always pushed for education, and he didn't really get a great education here. He didn't really get where he should have gotten. He reads, but it's probably like third, fourth grade level. He can do very simple money math, but no multiplication, division, fractions, nothing like that. And I know he's going to be watching this, so I'm not saying this to make Brendan feel bad. I'm just saying that there's a real need for education to be a little bit different with people with any disability.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they deserve just as much of a education as anybody else. And just because we're choosing to send our kids to public school shouldn't mean that we're not getting that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, our tax dollars are paying for the school to do these things. And we've had increases in our taxes because of the school system. This shouldn't just be going to a building.
Yeah.
It should be going for the education. And people that are educating should really be invested in wanting to teach our children, and not be closed-minded as to if they have a student in their classroom that has a disability, to be like, "Oh, I'm not dealing with that kid. That kid can go in the corner and go to the resource room or whatever, special education room or whatever." I think we have to learn as a society to just be all-encompassing.
Yeah, I really agree with you. And that's what I think is really nice about paraprofessionals, when they have some combination of education or experience and compassion to work well with kids and have a teacher that's responsive and open to working with them. Because it's maybe not reasonable to expect one single person, like you were saying, in a classroom of people that have such a range of needs to be able to meet each one of them.
Yeah.
So teachers are spread really thin, even if they in their mind know and would like to be available. So having extra support is really great. And I think I didn't really have paras in the schools I went to. And if the teacher or someone came to sit next to me so I could do my work, it was like a bad thing. Like, okay, I'm gonna sit next to you to make. But then I was like, well, why does it have to be a bad thing? That sometimes, even now, sometimes just having someone nearby like can really help me do things. So when I was working as a para, when I've done tutoring, I always just think like, let me do my best to be the person that I wished I had when I was lost or confused or needed a different explanation.
Exactly. And I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went to school, I called my parents aides.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think they acted like aid was a derogatory term.
Mm-hmm.
So they have me call them parents. What's your feeling on the term aid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that actually kind of connects to what we were all talking about a little earlier about the word disability. There's a lot of emphasis in our culture on being an independent, self-sufficient person that doesn't need help. So it's almost like, let's come up with a different word so that, because aid means like assistant, helper. And it's funny because I don't know how many people really strongly believe that. If you ask them, it's more about how values and things just kind of trickle down and we just kind of go with it. But yeah, what was it? Did you feel like you preferred one of the terms?
I did. I grew up on calling them like aides.
Yeah, and then it was a switch.
And I think they then switched to parents.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just like everything in today's society, how things have changed. Different terminology has changed throughout and kind of morphed throughout. Some things that you said in the 70s, oh my goodness, you could not say now because you would be considered racist, homophobic, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't, and it would be something that was very minuscule. So I think just as time goes on, sometimes the terminology just kind of grows with the times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to call them an aide because that's what they're still doing. A paraprofessional is an assistant and helping somebody to learn anyway. So I think that, whatever you choose to call them, whatever it was for you, I don't think that's necessarily a bad terminology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we went through that too. I didn't have that when I was in school. I had a resource room,
Mm-hmm.
which evidently was called the retard room for a very long time. And Brendan, that's one word Brendan does not like.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan does not like that word. He does not like that word said about anything, even if you're saying something is retarded. He does not like. He calls it the hard R,
Mm-hmm.
and he does not like that word. And I have to say, it's a pretty derogatory word. If you think about it, it's not a very nice, very nice meaning about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the implication of like you're behind and everyone else is ahead when it's like again along the lines of what we've been talking about. It just doesn't work that way. There's not a linear like how many points do you have as a person based on how well you can perform in this one really narrow set of standards. Like it's.
And I used to get told, "Oh, you're such a good kid. That makes up for your disability."
Yeah.
No, I am a good kid despite my disability.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of my disability, not because I don't have a disability or I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a good kid no matter what.
Like Jay, you were saying about how having a high IQ in a way kind of like backfires you or hinders you from receiving more support that you might need because of physical or other limitations. And it's like there's not there should be some sort of perfect disabled person that is this way and not any other way when it's like it's where people just have a right to be however they are and not
like another thing is like I'm not sure if it nowadays, but like I know with PTOT speech and stuff,
Mhm.
they slowly like got rid of my stuff, which if I knew how hard it would have been to get it after graduation, I would have fought more to keep it when I was in school.
Yep. I think they did phase out physical therapy and occupational therapy. You know, they had reviews and they had, you know, a review of it, and they also had like whether or not you qualified for it, which Brendan did. Brendan had gross motor, fine motor delays all through his entire life. I mean, he missed almost all but maybe 30 days of kindergarten because of his epilepsy. So we chose to have him redo kindergarten because every time he had a seizure, he would forget how to spell his name and forget the ABCs. So they were that significant that they were deterring his ability to what's the word I want? Oh gosh, retain the
like he'd have to keep starting from scratch.
He'd have to keep starting from scratch. Like it was like a little kid learning to walk each time afterwards. So we redid him. We had him redo kindergarten, and then but he was on an IEP since he was in 3 years old because he was in the Head Start program, and they saw the deficiencies and wanted to make sure he was set up, which was good. But like Jay too, they withdrew the physical therapy and the occupational therapy. And I think those are critical pieces when you have kiddos that are gross motor, fine motor delays and also delays physically. Like, you know, either walking or talking or whatever, you need speech, stuff like that. Even that got kind of phased out.
Yeah. And I noticed like when I did my, are you familiar with senior projects?
Yeah, I mean, I have an idea of what that is, and it might kind of like a thesis or like a
and
final.
One of my senior projects was creating a curriculum for another student in my resource room.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
like I remember in that year, I think like I'm not sure if it was the board of education or whatnot, but I remember my case manager like having to deal with like maybe board of education or something and saying that she needed certain minimal requirements for school, but honestly she was not ready for that in my opinion. Like if
Are you saying you presented that project and she said it like wasn't sufficient?
no. It was sufficient, but like it's like for example, they were making her say, "Oh, this student needs to go to this course and all that," but like
She wasn't there developmentally.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that happens a lot, right? Yeah. That happens a lot in the school system where kids are like just kind of pushed into the straight curriculum because maybe they haven't been tested. Yeah. Or they've been tested and they're like you with a higher IQ, so they don't qualify, even though they have physical disabilities. Or something that you can actually physically see. Yeah. And I almost think it's a double-edged sword, right? It's a double-edged sword because sometimes you have disabilities that you can't see and you really need help with, and you don't get it. And sometimes you don't have a disability, and
on paper, but you still need. Yeah, that's so interesting though, Jay. Like I feel like there's this phrase I see, "by us, for us," where it's like the people who are doing research or education for disabled people should have some personal experience or connection. So I think it's really cool that you designed that curriculum because you had you really knew what you were talking about. You didn't have to have a degree in education because you had the experience of going through school with something similar to what that student experienced. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, just agreeing with what you were saying. I mean, I had experience with that in my work as a para. Like, hey, my student, very obviously to everyone involved, could use support in these areas, but is lacking this diagnosis. Okay, well, so okay. Anyway, let's move on because it's it's a complicated process to go ahead and pursue that. Sometimes families aren't in a material situation where it's viable for them, or they don't want to, again, because of the stigma. And one thing about being a para where you're just, of course, you have to just help the student with the materials, and their special ed teacher will give you the IEP and the guidelines, but you can still, and even when I did tutoring or other sort of work in schools in this, parallel way, I did like the freedom of being able to be like, okay, I'm taking my group to the library, and the only thing is that they just need to learn those vocab words. So it doesn't say anywhere that I can't like throw a ball and play catch and let's do the vocab words. Or like, I knew I was learning like brain-based learning strategies and things. And it's funny because when my first tutoring job, it was technically being a para, teacher's aide, was right after I dropped out of school because I was like, I think I need some accommodations that I'm not getting here. And that kind of kicked off the diagnosis journey. But when I was like, okay, I need to get a job. Let me go work at this school. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what to do with these kids. Like, and of course I continued to research, like, how can I help someone who's a visual learner? Oh, I think I'm a visual learner because this, like, I learned so much about myself through the kids, and it felt really empowering to be like, I know what's going on here and I can actually help someone, and I can like right away see a positive response and reaction to it. So yeah.
Definitely. Do you want to go back to your? So I know we got. Sorry, I'm not playing footsies with you. Do you want to go back to your questions?
Sure.
Ask another question. So we got way off on everything here.
Hey, you said for us to just talk
It's
like
just,
we've known each other. So
what did they ask? What is life coaching?
No, that's a great question. Which I want to preface my answer by saying, when I first started doing life coaching, or I just call it coaching, I was extremely ashamed to say that I was doing that. Now I'm like, I'm proud of it. I really enjoy it. I think it's something so cool. But the reason being, I guess maybe there's some connotation of life coach. It's not legitimate, blah, blah. At this point, I don't even remember what all my things were. I just want to say that to say it's so common, and you could have some idea or something you want to do and feel like, well, that's embarrassing and weird, and still do it. And those feelings will change and go away. Because at that time, I could not imagine myself talking to people that I'm meeting for the first time about it and knowing that others will hear me talk about it.
Like, for example, people's special interests.
Yeah, like, oh, I better keep it a secret, like this thing I'm really into, versus just being like, I'm obsessed with this and it's the only thing I think about and like doing and I'm proud of it. So to answer your question now, life coaching or coaching is basically someone wanting a coach, someone to cheer them on or support them or help them be the one to make changes or develop something in their life, and maybe like step into a new level of something that they want to work on. So for me specifically, the things I work with people on are executive function. So if you identify as having ADHD or no, not everyone has a diagnosis or feels they just want some help with focusing or getting organized and they have trouble with that. Maybe specifically if they have creative projects, because there's beyond getting organized and focused, there's the feeling, like I was saying, of like, well, this is weird or I don't believe I can do it. So I help people develop their own confidence and feeling of capability.
What's the difference between that and voc rehab?
And sorry, what was the second part?
Voc rehab.
Voc rehab.
Oh, okay. I actually don't know. Can you tell me? I have like some guesses of what that could be, but it sounds. Is it something you have experience with? Could you tell me a little bit about it?
Kind of. They say I'm not bashing it. I'm just not that crazy about it. But they say they help you find a job.
Oh, yeah.
They help you find a job. They help you get into different things that you need to, if you need some special training.
Yeah.
They're kind of just there for you. But
it's like career oriented.
It's career oriented, and it's very biased.
I didn't have any luck with it.
No, and I think it's very. How can I say this? It's very. The words are escaping me, but I think it's just superficial. It's not it's not personable.
Yeah.
It's more just corporative. Is that a word?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
It's not done enough on an individual basis where it's inclusive, I guess. It's just kind of very broad.
Okay.
Just very broad, corporative.
Yeah, I got
corporately
so
done.
The difference, at least between my coaching, I would say is like the total opposite of that, because everything I do is so personalized or specific to what that person I'm working with is bringing to me. I don't have an agenda. I just want to hear from them. And then I'm like, here's how I think I could help you. What do you think about that? Because anyone can say, I don't want to try that. Let's think of something else.
Right.
So I'm extremely not just open to, but like encouraging people to come up with their like own strategy or idea, which isn't like I'm just sitting there and okay, you figure it out. More like I really just strive to support, like I do the asking of questions or being like, what about this? Have you considered this? To help someone else be the one to make their own answer and their own decision. And yeah, I forgot about that. Sometimes coaching is like thought of as like, oh, it's for job, like in a company, executive. That's not as much what I do, but most, again, it's life. People have jobs or want to get jobs. So we do talk about like things like how to, if you ask for accommodations in your job or if you're not receiving them, how to figure out your own. Like I had a client who's really light and sound sensitive and wasn't really having much luck when sharing those needs. So we just were like, okay, well, what can you do that you don't need to ask permission for? Let's figure out earplugs. Are you going to wear glasses? Like just kind of making a plan for someone to be able to have autonomy and not wait for like the boss to be like, okay, it's fine, you can do it. So
do you work for a special agency?
I work on my own privately, and I previously did work at a company that was like a combination of therapy and coaching, just with a team of other people, which was really cool. I learned a lot from being there. But hey,
what is your age range that you like to work with?
Yeah, well, it's been kind of a wide range, like people in their early to mid 20s, like I am in my later 20s, people in their 30s. I've also had a few people that are older, like moms specifically, who kind of either had a late diagnosis, are trying to make sense of it, and have some creative project they want to get back into working on with parenting and being disorganized has stopped them, so helping them get back into that. And then maybe the youngest person I've worked with in coaching is like 19, but then tutoring I've worked from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. So yeah,
that's really nice that I think when we have disabilities ourselves, we're able to put that extra effort into what we want to see for either our own offspring or the people that we're really engaging with. So I think that that's really nice that you can bring that all to the table, that you have that experience yourself of being diagnosed late in life, but you also know that what it was like being taught and learning at when you were younger. So you know that what you don't want to do, you know that this is the way that you think that things should be taught, and this is the way you learn. So maybe this is the way this other person is going to learn. And that's exactly what I did with my kids too. My mom really fought really hard, like I said, for me, and was pushed up against boards of education and teachers and everything when it was the 80s. And I think some of the things I butted up against with Brendan, with his disability especially, was I just wanted him to have equal rights to the education.
Yeah.
And I knew that he probably wasn't going to be a budding scientist or anything like that with, chemical knowledge and stuff like that. But I wanted him to have the basic necessities where if he could eventually maybe live on his own. At this point in time, that's not what Brennan wants. That's not what I want. There may become a time when he decides that that's what he wants, and he would have to have some supports put in place for him to do that. But not because of his autistic diagnosis, because of his epilepsy diagnosis, because there's safety issues with his epilepsy. Falling down or having a seizure and not having anybody there to administer medication, falling and hitting his head in the shower and passing out, or those kind of safety things, not educational wise. Educational wise, I think he probably could sustain an apartment, if somebody was going and checking on him and helping him throughout the day. But I think his epilepsy diagnosis scares us both.
Yeah.
And he's happier being home, and I'm happier having him here. And I don't really want to be a complete empty nester. I kind of like having my kiddo home.
And honestly, like when with safety issues and stuff, like when I first started to stay home alone and all that, like I wouldn't like take a bath by myself.
Yeah.
But like but now I can, and baths is very therapeutic to me, and
me too. I love baths.
and
but you also know the safety measures you need to take in order to take a bath, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And do you like make sure your phone's nearby just in case something happens?
Yeah.
And I remember like when I first moved in, like the tub came with the house.
Oh.
And it had the grab bar.
Yeah.
And one I was using it, and I put like all my weight on it.
Oh no. Did you fall?
I can't remember falling, but I busted the handle.
You busted
Oh
the
no!
handle, yeah.
Like it came clean off the wall.
Yeah. Now they make things a little bit more secure.
Stronger,
When I got bath fitters, I had them put in a bar.
Yeah.
And
it's a good bar.
It's a good bar.
Yeah.
Nice.
And we have a bath fitter too, and that's been a good thing too. But I need to have them come back and put an external bar on, because they just have the internal bars that go in the regular shelves. And Brendan really could definitely utilize one that's I also have I had stomach surgery 3 years ago, so I waffle back and forth with uh, low sugar, and sometimes it hits me when I'm in the shower, and I get really dizzy. So those things, those are, those are supportive things that we don't think about sometimes with people that are disabled in one form or another. And like Brendan, you just look at Brendan and you don't think that there's anything going on, and then you don't recognize until something you don't recognize until maybe he says something or he acts a certain way, or I just, I also have twins that have ADHD, and one of them struggled more than others through school, and he was on an IEP, but he didn't get diagnosed with his disabilities until he was in 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
And I had been pressing since 3rd grade. I'm like, there's something going on, educational wise, and he's not learning. And then it took his 6th grade teacher to say, why have we not done this for this child yet? Why are we waiting? Why are we just sitting here and doing this now? But I also want to talk about a little bit about with my kids, my twins, they have a little bit of resentment to me for getting them tested, for me introducing medication.
Oh, interesting.
For me, just kind of what I thought I was doing is just being a good mom and being where I needed to be for them, and make sure that they had what they needed to have in their life for their education. I completely left it up to them at sixth grade going into 7th grade whether or not they wanted to be on medication. And one of them decided at the beginning of 7th grade they were trying to focus and couldn't focus and needed to focus, and they decided then, and then one decided at the end of 7th grade that they needed to do that. I wasn't going to be one of these parents that pushed pills onto my kids, but I got from my son the other night. He was really upset with me, and he said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be on all these pills. And I was like, let's rewind the facts here and go back to what happened and really understand what you said to me in 7th grade, and not say mom pushed pills on me, because that's not what I did. I was very hesitant, in fact, to put my kids on medication because of the negative connotation that it was. But yeah, I don't know. Some days I feel like I want it parenting, and then other days I just feel like I missed the boat completely.
Oh man, I think it's amazing that you're willing to acknowledge that and hear your kids' feelings and have that conversation with them. That's really important. And I don't know I'm not a parent, but maybe it's been like 10 years of working with kids now. I didn't mention this, but my mom has also been a special educator and for decades. So I just absorbed a lot from her. And when I was nannying, I was just listening to parenting podcasts all the time to try to use it for my nannying to help me. But this is maybe just more general, in my coaching. Like I said, I've worked with some parents and more general beyond parenting, etc. I don't know if there's a way to win in your life. You can learn more, try to do better and do your best, but again, this measuring of what grade did you get?
And I think, as a parent too, not all the time are your kids going to like you. They're always going to love you, but they might not always like you. And it's okay. It's okay. I don't always like them. I mean, seriously, I have 5 kids, and do you know the crap that they put me through sometimes? There are times where I was like, oh my God, I just want to be as far away from you as I can possibly be right now. And I'm being real. This is being real. And I know a lot of parents are just like, oh yeah, just, it's just off on crazy train, but I'm not. I'm seriously, I love my kids. I love all 5 of my children without and I love them to the end of the earth. I will always love them. I will be there if you need something. I will be there for a word to listen to. Amir messaged me this morning and said, "Hey mom, I think I figured out housing." He's been in North Carolina. He went down there to be with his girlfriend. His girlfriend broke up with him. And he stayed a night in his car, and then he found a place to live with his boss. His boss is a woman, and she said that he could stay there for a little bit. And then he's like, "I just don't know what I want to do for housing. I just don't know what I want to do." I said, "Well, maybe it's time to come back." Nope, I'm not going back to Vermont. There's no way I'm going back to Vermont. I don't want to be in Vermont. I like it in North Carolina. I like the weather down here. The people aren't too bad. I love my job. I'm making a lot of money. I want to do that. And eventually he wants to go into the military. Well, this morning, he messages me, "I think I found a hotel I can stay at for a couple $100 a month." He goes, "It's not a seedy motel. It's a nice motel." I said, "Just make sure there's no bed bugs."
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yes.
I do need you to mention.
Okay, go ahead. Want to take your mic out? Can you get down?
Yeah, where is it?
It's downstairs, past the kitchen on the right.
Alright.
It's all that Pepsi you drink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that no matter what, you're always there for your kids in any capacity that you can be, and sometimes they just need you to listen.
Yeah.
And I've learned that through the boys having PTSD, that when they're coming at you and their mind's so overwhelmed, and like I said, they both have ADHD and they both have PTSD, but when your mind is so overwhelmed, sometimes you're just and you just need to, I call it vomit at the mouth.
Yeah.
You just need to spew it all out, and then you feel better. You feel better, and sometimes it's not even having the other person say anything.
Yeah.
They just need you to listen.
Hear it. Yeah. And it's great that you know that, like, not to discredit them, but maybe not take everything when you can tell they're in that state at face value. Because for people who might have that need to just process verbally or say something impulsively, and someone who doesn't understand, they might be like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about?" Or you said something really hurtful, or not to excuse someone from, you can apologize after, but know that at that time it was like kind of
and it's hard when you're in that momentum of having a child that doesn't fully understand their disability and what they're saying, and that they need to apologize afterwards, because there's that guilt and shame that comes in as a component after you've said something really horrific.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that as a parent too. I really have to remove myself from a situation when there's been something that's said to me. I'm pretty thick skinned, but I'm not thick skinned around my kids. And what they say to me does hurt. But I also have to stop and realize where it's coming from, what's going on, how they're coming off from whatever's going on in their life. So I can be empathetic and sympathetic to the situation, but I also, I guess, afterwards kind of demand respect and an apology.
Yeah, it's like a balance of, I know where you're coming from and I get it, but it doesn't make it okay. But you're okay as a person. It's just
exactly.
Yeah, and teaching them too, like how to, for themselves after they say something.
They don't have enough of that humanitarian type stuff being taught at the school. And I think that they really should be taking some sort of psychological classes, both the educators and the kids. Because
more like social skills.
Yeah.
Well, even that term is kind of loaded, because for some kids they do have as part of their IEP to learn social skills, but it's usually things like developmentally appropriate topic, like what Jay was saying, but like don't talk about your special interest, or kind of like make eye contact, or these, and not just like, we're talking more just human skills of how to be compassionate,
or even some social emotional stuff, like letting boys know that it's okay to not be okay. Like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be frustrated, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be upset about little things. Like,
Mhm.
I think that we put too much emphasis on men in society that says you have to be the breadwinner and you have to be the man and you can't show emotions and you have to withhold everything from your partner and you have to withhold everything from society and you just have to walk straight every day and get up and go do what you need to do and that's it. You can't have any emotion. That's so old school.
Yeah.
It's so burned out and I think the most sexiest thing about a man really is honestly a man that will sit down and cry with you or sit down and cry in front of you because then you can know that it's that real stuff, you know? And yeah, I have a lot of respect for men that can do that. Hey, Mike, you back up, kid?
Were you talking about getting in trouble for crying?
Well, I was talking not necessarily getting in trouble for crying, but that it's okay for a man to cry.
Yes.
You know?
I remember that that's one issue Mom used to have with Dana is when I'm upset, I cry, and I used to get in trouble for crying.
With Dana or with your mom?
With Dana.
Oh, really?
And Mom did not like that at all.
That surprises me.
Yeah.
Come in camera there, kid. Yeah, I mean, she's definitely not like that now. I think she's a little bit more educated about that now, but because with the boys she wasn't like that at all. She let them show their emotion and it was good, but yeah, I thank you for what you do because I think that's amazing and I think you've taken your own adversities and made them into something really amazing, and the fact that you are doing something that you care about, that you like to do, you know, I think that there needs to be more people out there like that, you know. They need to really get in there and get doing it.
Thanks for saying that. And yeah, part of what made me want to start was I was like, if I feel like I have these things I want to do and I can't do them, oh my gosh, because either I'm too distracted or it's too embarrassing. And I was like, I have to do it. I have to find the way. I was like, then there's other people, because maybe some of the most brilliant people are the most scared and the most restricted in their sharing. So I really want to know what ideas they have, or I want the world to hear their voice or see their projects. So I want to help them be able to do whatever it is they want to do.
So I want to talk a little bit about your art. What's your medium that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think just I talk about this with people. I feel like anything, like your whole life could be your art project, and you can come at everything you do like creatively. And so one of the ways that applies is just like problem solving, or the way you like tell your own story and what's going on with you. Like you could be very creative and have your own narrative about it. But to more literally answer your question, I really like drawing, like illustration type art, making comics, collaging. Um, I like cooking a lot, and I feel like that's an art for me because I like experimenting and presentation. So those are some, yeah, and I just kind of grabbed a few different paintings, drawings, and some comics. I don't know if I'll show all of them. One thing I want to say about them is that some of them are not finished, and they're in progress. I don't know if I'm going to finish them, but I was like, I think that's okay because I have things that I've worked on for like years and years, and some people have this thing of like I make stuff but I don't finish it and I don't ever show it, and it's like I'm not sure what. Maybe some of these will not be finished, and I could still show them even
so
if they
you also
aren't.
have a diagnosis of ADHD, right?
Yeah.
So that's very, very neurotypical of ADHD, right?
Oh yeah.
It's very neurotypical.
Yeah.
I do that with housework.
And it's like, okay, pick up something else.
Yeah.
Is it actually that bad? And I think it's cool that you said that, neurotypical of ADHD, because when people say just neurotypical as like you're either neurodivergent or neurotypical. I don't really buy that because I don't believe, like, it's typical of the ADHD neurotype to have multiple things going. Yeah, because our brain, or it's typical of this neurotype. So yeah, it's like they're just different styles rather than one to like. Yeah.
I go back and forth with crocheting. I have a blanket that I need to finish, and I haven't picked up my crochet hook in probably like 3 months.
Yeah.
And I really need to just sit down and do it. But
Yeah.
my brain is like, nope, you've got to do da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And you're not doing anything else but that.
Interesting.
But I do that. I'll be like, okay, today is day to clean, cleaning day. And I'll start with the bathroom, and I'll like put all the soap down and the scrubber stuff down, get that. And then I'll go do dishes. Won't finish the bathroom, go do dishes. Then I'll be like, okay, run the water for dishes, get everything ready for the dishes, go back to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay, the dishes are
I'm the same way.
And then I'll be like, oh no, I gotta sweep.
Yeah.
And I'm like all over the place.
Oh yeah.
And if somebody interrupts me,
it's hard to get back.
I'm like, no,
yeah.
just let me go. I need to go
in the zone.
now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think maybe it's part of like, yeah, the need for variety, especially if it's not something that is your passion where you can just focus in on it. It's like, okay, gotta switch it around. And yeah, I feel like for myself, I've worked a lot on just being like, big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Is it hurting anyone?
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
So yeah, and then with projects, yeah, there's a like I remember a time where I felt this way, and then other people I worked with also like, I think I'm not really an artist because I haven't worked on stuff for a long time, or I don't think I'm good or real because, and it's like if you've ever drawn something, my interpretation of it is really flexible and open, and like you don't have to have published something or so I think the first picture I'll show is actually one. Hold on, I have to think. I'm pretty sure I worked on this for like 2 years. I started working on it in 2018.
Is it alright if I hold it up?
Yeah. So
and we'll put pictures. I don't know you can see it right now, but we'll take pictures.
Yeah, it might be hard to see. It's like a graphite pencil drawing, and it's kind of faded because I traveled all over the place with it, and I worked on it, and I was so like perfectionistic with it.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on in it.
Do you sell these?
Not yet. I might do that. I do feel like, oh, it would be nice for people to have some of these nice things in their home if they wanted to. So
have you done art shows like?
Not yet. Yeah, I'm kind of. I don't know that I could like put a timeline on it, but at the same time as I've always done art. I've always drawn, made pictures, had ideas, planned things out. I'm kind of never not. But in the last 2 to 3 years, I started like really focusing on making my coaching business a thing, which doesn't mean I stopped working on art during that time. But it was part of the thing of like, I make art and I'm scared to let people know or show it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to work on these things and then help other people with these things. That's my creative project. And now through my own work, like working with my clients also helps me a lot too. They inspire me a lot. And so I've kind of been like, oh, maybe I actually have some more energy to dedicate into researching and preparing to like frame some of these pieces, find out about where to show them. Again, it's like there's a lot of logistics and planning that goes into that where, oh, I'm working on this project and working at a job and running my business, and it's just like running a household. So yeah, but I might do it. And it's funny I'm like, again, talking through that process to say for a lot of people, including myself, at one time it's like, why don't you just finish stuff and show it? Like, it's so simple. And it's like, it's not, there's a lot of steps involved. And sometimes we put pressure on ourselves. Like, it should just be A to B, like, just do this thing. And when you're like, okay, actually, it might be a complex process that I need to slow down, give myself time to do, maybe get some help. And then it becomes more possible than of being like, why haven't I done this yet? So
I think we all do that to an extent. I think that we put too much pressure on us. Too much pressure on ourselves. trans society puts a lot of pressure on us too to be kind of the atypical. You just gotta do this, do that, and you have to live this way and live that way, and it doesn't work that way with somebody that has either autism spectrum or ADHD. It just doesn't work that way. Do you want to show something else?
Sure. I will show. Actually, this is a recent one. Something I like about this one. This one will probably show up well.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's I was feeling like really exhausted. I was going through some serious fatigue, and I got these new oil paint pens, and I really wanted to try them. Or like they're kind of like crayons, but oil paint. And I was like, I don't feel good at all. Let me just make something. So I just drew like a representation of that feeling, and I felt so much better just to process it. I mean, like this person is like cute and I like it, but also just that feeling of like I'm exhausted. And then I'm just seeing that and being able to like not just be like, and I can't make anything, and I'm just...
I know, like have you ever heard of the spoon theory?
Totally.
I don't use the spoon theory. Me and my dad made up another theory called the dollar theory. Like everyone get $1 worth of energy a day.
And like how many cents do you have left at the end of the day? Or things that add money into your account?
I only have like 10 cents left.
Or you're negative, you're like in debt. I love that. I love that you made up your own version of it.
I usually wind up in debt.
At the end of the day? Oh no, that's not good.
What are some things that recharge your account?
Just relaxing.
Chilling out.
Yeah.
I think we don't do enough of that sometimes. I think we're just like super hyper focused that we gotta do this and gotta do that, and then we don't.
It's like you gotta put gas in the car too if you want to keep going. Yeah.
And I do want to say I don't know whether we're running on time here. I really think that my having ADD really helped me to raise 5 kids.
I bet. Yeah.
Because I was able to be in more than one place and one situation at one time. Like I felt sometimes like I was superhuman because I was like, oh my gosh, like I used to say my life is like a bad Jerry Springer show, because like there would be things going on that I would be like, how in the world am I handling this? And how in the world am I going through this? And what in the world is everything, doing? And you're just able to like fix dinner and change diapers and run a bath. And
I love that you're like seeing how it's a strength for you there.
Yeah, and I think we need to do that. We need to normalize that people have autism, that people have disabilities that may or may not affect our everyday life or our everyday job, and that doesn't define us as a person. It doesn't ultimately define us as a person.
Or that it can be an advantage in certain situations too. Like sometimes I see a lot of commiserating and relating about like, this is hard for me, can't do this, never been able to do this, not going to be able to do this. And I get that there is some sort of like comfort in talking on those terms, but I always really like to orient towards like, what about these things that I can do, and like these particular abilities and strengths. And it's funny because I was nannying 3 kids under 3 at the same time, and it was really hard. But just hearing you say that, I'm like, I guess I had that advantage of I was like, I can't be 3 people, but I'm gonna have to do the best I can to be, and maybe I was a little better equipped to do that. But I'll like maybe pick I grabbed some, but talking about kids made me think of, I'll show 2 things. One is a comic from that time that I was nannying, and then here is this is from a story that I'm working on, and I won't. We can show this later, but it's like a embryo connected to the earth, like from a volcano.
yeah.
So
Very cool.
yeah. And then this one, yeah, probably won't really register on camera, but it's just
That's
kind of
very cool.
a little slice of my week. But some part of it is like I'm carrying those 3 babies up to put them down for their nap, and
How old
I'm
are
thinking they were like 1, 2, and 3.
How old are they?
Yeah, so I was thinking I need a nap too.
How old are they now?
They are now, I guess it's been like 3 years. So the 3-year-old is 6.
4, 5,
the 2,
6.
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's like unbelievable. But yeah, I think I want to try to remember. There were like things that each of you said that I was like, oh, I want to just come back to that really quick if it doesn't slip away, and if it does, that's okay. But well, Jay, about the money spoons thing, I just wanted to highlight that again because it's a perfect example of what my work, like I was saying, I really love it when people already have something that they've thought of that works for them that we could like expand on, or like get creative and invent our own phrase or like framework that makes like such specific sense to your life. And being aware of energy levels is like a really important skill to learn that I help people with, like what is extra draining for you. If you know you're going to have to do some of those things, how could you even like prepare beforehand to like fill up a little more before you go do that thing that's really draining, or starting to get a sense of those things. And then you can, or even things like the lighting in your house, you might know it bothers you but not think, well, what about changing it, or different, it could be anything. But starting to think like, okay, if I don't have the same like operating system, then what is actually like the things I need that would help me, and how could I adjust or figure out what adds to your balance and what drains it, and just have a sense. Because like also with having an emotional outburst or just shutting down, melting down, starting to know what things might lead you to get there before it happens, then you could pause and like take some measures to stop that and feel better. So yeah.
Well, I think we're getting past our time here, so
We've had a lot to talk about.
We have so much to talk about, and I honestly think we're maybe in the spring we'll have you come back.
I would love to,
because I think there's a lot to talk about, and I had a great time. I mean, it's nice to have somebody that you can talk about that kind of gets it, right?
Yeah, like I had these list of questions, and I didn't even read off it.
Yeah, which is what we talked about the other day, about just getting really good with just kind of going with the flow.
Yeah.
We like to make our podcast easy for people to listen to and want to listen to, and something that resonates with people. This might not resonate with everybody, but it's going to resonate with those people that we really want to have watch our podcast.
Yeah.
So we thank you so much.
Do you have one more time? Do you have a website?
Yeah, I do have a website. It is orb-weaver.com, like the spider. I'm like, I could get into a long story about that, but I'll save it for next time. But
and we'll definitely I'm going to take some pictures of the art that you want me to take pictures of, and that will go up with the video.
Awesome.
As well as we'll put your website up, and maybe your email if you want your email
totally.
But yeah, what do you think, Jay?
Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Scooch.
Cool. I also have like a flyer that you could take a picture of. It's in my car right now.